The lawyer's voice was steady and professional as he read through the will. To my son Connor Kincaid, I leave the entirety of my commercial real estate holdings, investment accounts, and business interests. He paused, flipping to the next page. Regarding my daughter Olivia, no provision has been made. I sat perfectly still in the leather chair, my hands folded in my lap. Across the mahogany conference table, my father leaned back with a slight smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. Connor shifted uncomfortably beside him, but said nothing. The lawyer continued through the remaining details, but I barely heard them. No provision. 4 years of art school, 6 years building my gallery from nothing, and I'd been erased with 2 words. When he finished, I spoke calmly. May I have a certified copy of the will, please? The lawyer nodded, making a note. My father's smirk widened slightly, as if my composure amused him. My phone buzzed in my purse. I glanced at it as we stood to leave. A text from Connor, "Don't make this weird." I didn't reply. I simply slipped my phone back into my purse, shook the lawyer's hand, and walked toward the door. Behind me, I heard my father say something to Connor in a low voice. They both chuckled. I kept walking. The corridor outside the law office was cold. The air conditioning hit my flushed cheeks as I stepped out, and I took a slow breath. My hands were shaking slightly, so I pressed them against my sides. My name is Olivia Kincaid. I'm 32 years old, and I just learned that my father values me at exactly nothing. I pulled out my phone and opened my notes app. I typed 3 words, document. Don't duel. It was something my grandmother had told me years ago, back when she was still alive. When people show you who they are, write it down. Don't fight them on it. Just document and move forward. I saved the note and slipped my phone back into my pocket. As I walked toward the elevator, my cousin Stephanie appeared from around the corner. She worked in the same building for an insurance firm. She gave me a sympathetic look that was almost worse than my father's smirk. Olivia, I heard. I'm so sorry. It's fine, I said, pressing the elevator button. She lowered her voice. He warned us you'd be dramatic about this. Just so you know. The elevator doors opened. I stepped inside and turned to face her. I'm not being dramatic, Stephanie. I'm being practical. The doors closed before she could respond. Last Thanksgiving played in my mind as I drove back to the gallery. The whole family had gathered at my father's house, the table loaded with food nobody really wanted to eat. We were there for appearances, not appetite. My father had stood at the head of the table, wine glass raised, and toasted Connor's newest acquisition. To my son, who understands that real success means expansion. 3 new properties this quarter. That's vision. Everyone had clapped. Connor had beamed. Then my father had turned to me. And to Olivia, who's still pursuing her little gallery hobby. At least she's paying rent somewhere. The turkey had tasted like chalk after that. I'd chewed mechanically, swallowed, and smiled like it didn't matter. But across the table, my grandmother had caught my eye. She leaned forward slightly and said, just loud enough for me to hear, "Cash flow is louder than applause, sweetheart." She died 3 months later. The memory of her voice was clearer than anything my father had ever said to me. I pulled into the parking lot behind Northlight Gallery and sat in my car for a moment. The building was small, brick, tucked into a neighborhood that was slowly gentrifying. I'd signed the lease 4 years ago with money I'd saved from freelance design work. My father had called it adorable when he first saw it. He'd meant it as an insult. Inside, the gallery was quiet. Morning light filtered through the tall windows, warming the white walls. I'd just installed a new exhibition, Geometric Abstracts by a local artist named Marcus. The tape lines on the floor marked where each piece would hang. I pulled out my phone and checked my email. There was one from a corporate banking headquarters downtown. The subject line read, "Art Leasing Inquiry, 3 lobby spaces." I opened it and read carefully. They were interested in rotating exhibitions for their main building and 2 satellite offices. 12-month contracts with purchase options. Professional installation. Liability insurance required. This was real revenue. This was the kind of contract that could stabilize my cash flow for an entire year. I replied immediately, professional and enthusiastic. I attached my certificate of insurance, my standard consignment agreement, and my portfolio of past installations. Then I scheduled a courier to deliver physical samples to their offices by end of week. I was finalizing the 50-50 consignment split with Marcus when my phone rang. My father's number. I let it go to voicemail. 2 minutes later, Connor called. I answered. Hey, Liv. Dad wants to drop by the gallery this afternoon. He's got some clients in the area. We're appointment only, I said. Come on, don't be like that. I hung up. My father showed up anyway at 3 o'clock, bringing 2 men in expensive suits. I was in the middle of adjusting the lighting on one of Marcus's pieces when I heard the door chime. Olivia, my father called, his voice echoing in the high-ceilinged space. Look at this place. She's still painting feelings for a living. The 2 men chuckled politely. I stepped down from the ladder and turned to face them, keeping my expression neutral. Hello, Philip, I said, using his first name deliberately. We're appointment only. I'm happy to schedule a proper viewing if you're interested. His smile faltered slightly. The 2 clients exchanged glances. One of them cleared his throat. We don't want to intrude. It's no intrusion for scheduled guests, I replied pleasantly. I just can't accommodate walk-ins during installation. My father's jaw tightened, but he recovered quickly. Of course. We were just in the neighborhood. Gentlemen, shall we? They left. I watched through the window as they climbed into my father's car. He was talking animatedly, probably spinning the encounter into some story about my difficult personality. My phone buzzed. A text from my landlord, coffee tomorrow? Want to discuss a lease renewal option? I replied immediately, yes. What time? His response came fast, 10 a.m. bringing a 5-year proposal if you can post 3 months deposit. I stared at the message. 5 years would give me stability. 3 months deposit would drain my savings. But stability was worth it. I texted back, see you at 10. The art leasing contract came through 2 weeks later. 12 months, 3 locations, rotating quarterly. The first payment landed in my account on a Friday morning, and I sat at my desk watching the numbers change in my banking app. Real revenue. Predictable revenue. The kind my father had always said I'd never achieve with feelings on canvas. I updated my cash flow spreadsheet, color-coding the leasing income in green. My gallery sales were blue, workshop fees were yellow. For the first time, green was the largest column. That afternoon, Connor showed up alone. He was carrying a folder and wearing his serious business expression. Liv, I want to talk about something. He sat down across from my desk without being invited. I've been thinking. You've done well with this place. Better than I expected. Thank you, I said carefully. He slid the folder across the desk. What if we made it official? I'm offering you 30% equity in Northlight. We'd formalize it, bring in some capital, expand the programming. I opened the folder. The term sheet was professionally printed. But buried in the 3rd paragraph was the condition: Philip Kincaid retains directional approval on all major decisions. I closed the folder and slid it back across the desk. No, thank you. Connor blinked. You didn't even read it. I read enough. He laughed, genuinely surprised. Come on, Liv. This is a good offer. You'll come around once you think about it. I won't, I said. But I appreciate you bringing it by. He left shaking his head. I filed the term sheet in a drawer labeled Declined Offers, and went back to my spreadsheet. 3 days later, I had a meeting with a community development financial institution. The loan officer's name was Angela, and she was the first banker who'd ever looked at my business plan without visible skepticism. "You're organized," she said, flipping through my documentation. "Boring organized. That's good." I laughed. "Is that a compliment?" "In lending, yes." She pointed to my recurring revenue projections. "These aren't leasing contracts, the workshops, the consignment agreements. You've got predictable cash flow. Most artists come in with hope and a dream. You came in with a model." We spent an hour mapping out a modest working capital line of credit. Nothing extravagant, just enough to smooth out the gaps between payments and give me room to invest in marketing. "Build your audit trail," Angela said as we wrapped up. "Document everything. If you want to grow this, you'll need clean records." I left her office with approval paperwork and a strange sense of validation. My father had called me impractical for years. But here was a banker, someone who lived in numbers, telling me I was doing it right. That evening, I filed articles of organization for Northlight Holdings LLC. It was separate from the gallery itself, a structure that would let me invest in other ventures if opportunities arose. I didn't tell Connor. I didn't tell my father. I just filed the paperwork and moved forward. The county email alert arrived on a Tuesday morning. I was opening my second coffee when my phone pinged with a notification from the public records system I'd subscribed to months ago. Notice of default, Turner Plaza, 428 Commerce Street. I sat up straight. Turner Plaza was my father's flagship property. The building where his firm had its offices, where he collected rent from a dozen other tenants. The building he'd bought 20 years ago and leveraged repeatedly to fund other acquisitions. I opened the full notice. A balloon payment was due in 90 days. The lender was preparing to accelerate the note. I printed the notice, dated it, and filed it in a new folder labeled Turner Plaza. My phone buzzed. A text from a title company representative I'd worked with on a previous transaction. "Special Assets Division will be handling this. Thought you'd want to know." Special assets. That meant the bank was preparing to move the property into workout or foreclosure. This wasn't just a late payment. This was serious. I texted back, "Thanks for the heads up." Then I sat at my desk and thought about my grandmother's voice. Cash flow is louder than applause. My father had spent years applauding himself. Maybe he'd forgotten to watch the cash flow. The bank held an open house for potential buyers the following month. I attended as an anonymous visitor, dressed in business casual, carrying a notebook like any other investor. The leasing agent walked our group through the building, pointing out the recently renovated lobby, the updated HVAC system, the proximity to public transit. Everything sounded good until you started counting. 2 commercial suites were vacant. Another 3 had tenants on month-to-month leases, which meant they could leave anytime. I made notes about deferred maintenance, water stains on ceiling tiles, flickering lights in the hallway, an elevator that groaned when it moved. My father was there, standing near the entrance with his arms crossed, smiling at prospective buyers like this was all part of his plan. He didn't notice me in the group. The leasing agent whispered to someone next to her, 2 more vacancies pending next quarter. Renewals are soft. I wrote that down too. When the tour ended, I walked past my father without making eye contact. He was too busy selling the sizzle to notice the details. In my car, I added a page to my notebook, walkaway number. I calculated what I could afford to pay for the note if the bank decided to sell it. It wasn't much, but it was something. My father caught me in the parking lot 2 days later. I was leaving a coffee shop near the gallery when his car pulled up beside mine. "Olivia," he called through his open window. "We need to talk." I stopped, my hand on my car door. "About what?" He got out and walked over, his expression somewhere between frustrated and paternal. "You could have had a desk and a future in my firm. You still could. This art thing, it's been fun, but you're 32 now. It's time to be serious." I looked at him calmly. "I took a wall and built a business, Philip. That's pretty serious." His jaw ticked. Don't call me Philip. It's your name. I'm your father. Then act like one, I said, and got in my car. I drove away before he could respond. In my rearview mirror, I saw him standing in the parking lot, his hands on his hips, staring after me. That evening, I received a forwarded email from the title company rep. It was a general sale notice list, public information about distressed notes the bank's special assets division was preparing to sell. Turner Plaza was on the list. Not personal. Just business. I reached out to a small arts foundation called Maple Street that I'd worked with before. Their director, Helen, had mentioned wanting to invest in projects that supported local artists while staying financially sustainable. I explained the Turner Plaza opportunity. If we acquired the note, we could stabilize the building and convert part of it to artist studios and community spaces. But everything would have to be transparent. Public processes only. No special treatment. Helen was quiet for a moment. You mean because it's your father's building? Yes. And you're okay with that? I'm insisting on it, I said. No direct contact with him about the transaction. Everything through proper channels. If we can't do it right, we don't do it. She agreed. We brought in a lawyer who drafted a clean, boring operating agreement between Northlight Holdings and Maple Street Foundation. No drama, just terms. The lawyer filed everything with the state and gave me a copy for my records. I added it to my Turner Plaza folder, which was getting thicker by the week. A broker I knew sent me a text, hearing the note might sell soon. Just FYI. I forwarded it to Helen. She replied, let's be ready. The bank opened a digital data room for qualified buyers. We signed the confidentiality agreement and logged in. For 3 days, I did nothing but read. Rent rolls showing income and vacancies. Estoppel certificates from existing tenants. Elevator inspection reports. Roof certifications showing it had maybe 5 years left. Environmental assessments. Title reports. I built a financial model in a spreadsheet, calculating what the building would actually generate in revenue versus what it would cost to maintain. I factored in vacancy rates, tenant improvement costs, leasing commissions, and reserves for future capital expenditures. The numbers were worse than my father had probably admitted to himself. The building was bleeding cash. I also noticed that a dental REIT had downloaded the same files from the data room. We had competition. Helen and I met with our lawyer to review everything. If we buy this note, he said, we're buying the right to collect debt or foreclose. We're not buying the building itself. Not yet. I understand, I said. And you're comfortable with that? Given the personal connection? There's no personal connection, I replied. This is a distressed asset. We're qualified buyers. That's all. He nodded and started drafting our offer letter. We submitted a sealed bid to the bank's special assets team. Our offer was clean, proof of funds attached, no contingencies, standard terms. We weren't the highest bidder, but we were the most certain. The bank's response came 3 days later. Email subject line, accepted. I stared at the screen for a full minute before forwarding it to Helen. She called immediately. We got it, she said, and I could hear the disbelief in her voice. We actually got it. Now the hard part starts, I replied. Our lawyer drafted the standard borrower notification letter. It was professional and impersonal, outlining my father's options: reinstate the loan by paying what was owed, refinance with another lender, offer a deed in lieu of foreclosure, or proceed to statutory foreclosure. No adjectives. No emotion. Just options and deadlines. The letter was mailed certified. My father signed for it on a Thursday morning. By Thursday afternoon, my phone buzzed with a text from him: "This is beneath you." I didn't respond. I forwarded the message to our lawyer and wrote, "For the record." My father tried to outmaneuver us. 2 weeks after receiving the letter, he transferred the property into a newly formed LLC. It was a classic move, trying to muddy the ownership and delay proceedings. But the loan documents had a due-on transfer clause. The moment he deeded the property to another entity without the lender's consent, he triggered default interest and acceleration. The bank's counsel sent him a notice immediately. His fix had backfired. His lawyer called our lawyer requesting a meeting. Our lawyer called me. Do you want to meet with them? No, I said. Please advise them to continue communicating through counsel. Are you sure? This is your father. I'm sure. The message was relayed. My father didn't take it well, according to Connor, who called me that evening sounding frustrated. You won't even meet with him? Seriously? Everything needs to go through proper channels, I said. That's not personal. It's professional. It feels personal, Connor muttered. That's not my problem, I replied, and hung up. My father's refinance attempt fell apart in mid-November. Interest rates had climbed since his original loan, and his cash flow was too weak to qualify for favorable terms. The lenders who reviewed his application all passed. Meanwhile, 3 more tenants in Turner Plaza gave notice. They'd been waiting to see how the ownership situation resolved, and uncertainty made them nervous. The building's income dropped further. We granted him a short forbearance period, documented in writing, to keep essential services running. We weren't trying to sabotage the property. We just wanted him to face reality. His attorney finally floated the idea of a deed in lieu of foreclosure. It was a way for him to surrender the property voluntarily, avoiding the public mess of a foreclosure auction. Helen and I met with our lawyer to discuss terms. If he gives us the deed, I asked, what happens to his firm's office space? That's a separate question, the lawyer said. We'd need to negotiate a lease if he wants to stay. Standard commercial terms. And if he doesn't want to stay? Then he moves out. I nodded slowly. Let's offer him a fair lease. Market rate. Same terms we'd offer any tenant. The offer was drafted and sent. My father's lawyer acknowledged receipt. Days passed with no response. The deed in lieu negotiation took 3 weeks. Our lawyer, my father's lawyer, and a mediator worked through the details. Property taxes would be current, title would be clean, tenant security deposits would be transferred properly. We included a lease offer for my father's firm at market rate. The space was good, the terms were reasonable. It would let him stay and rebuild without the burden of ownership. He refused to sign as a tenant. His lawyer called ours, sounding tired. He says it's humiliating to rent from his daughter. Then he can lease elsewhere, our lawyer replied. But this property will transfer regardless. That part's decided. The deadline came. My father signed the deed in lieu, transferring Turner Plaza to Northlight Holdings. But he didn't sign the lease. I received the recorded deed via email on a Friday afternoon. I saved it to my Turner Plaza folder and closed my laptop. The building where my father had built his empire was now mine. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt tired. I did the walkthrough with our property manager and an elevator technician the following Monday. We moved through each floor, checking systems, documenting deferred maintenance, making notes about what needed immediate attention. On the 3rd floor, I ran my hand along the brass railing in the stairwell. I'd touched this same railing as a kid, waiting in the lobby while my father finished meetings. It had felt warm then, polished and important. Now it was just cold metal, tarnished in spots, needing polish. The property manager pointed out water damage in the ceiling. We'll need to address the roof within 2 years. Budget for it now. I made notes in my phone. Everything was fixable. It would just take time and money and attention to detail. The things my father had stopped providing. That evening, I received an email from the engraver. They'd finished the proof for the new lobby plaque. Simple, clean lettering, Northlight Building. I approved it and scheduled installation for the following week. The certified letter went out to all tenants and occupants, including my father. It outlined the ownership change, assured them of stable management, provided new contact information for maintenance requests, and noted improved response times going forward. My father's firm had 30 days to vacate per the deed in lieu agreement. Connor called me, angry. "You're really kicking him out?" "He was offered a lease," I said. "He declined." "Because it's humiliating." "Because he's proud," I corrected. "There's a difference. Pride is his choice. This is going to destroy him." I was quiet for a moment. Then I said, "He destroyed himself, Connor. I'm just cleaning up the aftermath." Connor hung up. I didn't call back. The next day, we closed on a $504 loan for the building conversion. 2 upper floors would become code-compliant artist studios and a community classroom space. The rental income from downstairs would cover our operating costs. The studios would provide affordable workspace for artists who couldn't afford commercial leases. It was exactly what I'd pitched to Helen months ago. And now it was real. A reporter from the local business journal called, asking for a quote about the Turner Plaza acquisition. I kept it brief. "We're here to keep lights on and doors open." She asked follow-up questions about my father, about family dynamics, about whether this was personal. I declined to comment on anything beyond the business transaction. The article ran the following week. It focused on the innovative use of commercial space for arts programming and community development. My father was mentioned only as the previous owner. I didn't read the comments. Installation day for the lobby plaque was scheduled for 9 a.m. on a Tuesday. I wasn't planning to be there, I had gallery obligations that morning. But the property manager sent me a photo. The old brass lettering, Turner Plaza, being carefully removed. Then the new sign going up, Northlight Building. I stared at the photo for a long time. The building my father had owned for 2 decades now carried my gallery's name. The business he'd mocked was now his landlord. I forwarded the photo to Helen with a simple message, "It's official." She replied, "Congratulations. You did good." That afternoon, a courier delivered a final envelope to my father's office. It contained the move-out checklist, key return instructions, and a reminder of the deadline. Standard procedure. I wondered if he opened it himself or if his assistant did. I wondered if he felt anything or if he was just numb by now. I didn't call to ask. My father's firm vacated on the last day of the deadline. I wasn't there for that either. The property manager handled everything, documenting the condition of the space, collecting keys, noting minor damages that would be deducted from the security deposit. Connor's firm moved out the same week. He'd been subleasing from my father, and without that arrangement, he had to find new space. The lobby, now empty of my father's presence, became something new. We installed rotating exhibits from local artists, changing them quarterly. The tenants started bringing their kids during lunch breaks to look at the art. One afternoon, I stopped by to check on a maintenance issue. Connor was standing in the lobby, looking at a series of abstract paintings by a young artist named Zara. His expression was unreadable. He saw me and nodded once. Then he left without saying anything. I watched him go, then turned back to the paintings. They were vibrant, hopeful, full of color. The kind of work my father would have called impractical. But people kept stopping to look at them. And Zara had already sold 2 pieces to tenants in the building. A teenager came into the gallery one Saturday afternoon, clutching a portfolio. She was maybe 17, nervous, with paint under her fingernails. "Are you Olivia?" she asked. "I am. I'm in the community class upstairs at the Northlight Building. Miss Helen said you might look at my work." I gestured to the table near the window. "Show me." She laid out her prints carefully. They were linoleum block prints, bold and graphic, depicting scenes from the neighborhood. A bus stop. A corner store. People waiting, moving, living. They were good. Raw, but good. "How much would you charge for one of these?" I asked. She blinked. "I don't know. I've never sold anything." I pulled out my phone and showed her a pricing calculator I'd built for emerging artists. "Here's how you figure it out. Materials plus time plus your skill level plus market rates for similar work. Don't undervalue yourself. She studied the calculator seriously, making notes in her phone. When she looked up, her eyes were bright. Thank you. Keep making work, I said. And bring me more when you're ready. After she left, I sat at my desk and thought about my father's voice. Still painting feelings for a living. Yes. And it was paying the bills. And providing workspace for kids like that teenager. And keeping lights on in a building that would have been foreclosed otherwise. Saturday morning light poured through the gallery windows, warming the floor where I'd set up easels for a weekend workshop. 8 participants, ranging from college students to retirees, were learning to mix colors and understand composition. I walked between them, offering quiet suggestions, answering questions. This was the work my father had never understood. The slow building of skills, of confidence, of community. The rent roll for the Northlight building was balanced. The artist studios were fully leased. The gallery had a waiting list for workshop spaces. The corporate art leasing contracts were renewing. My phone sat on the desk, silent. No messages from my father. No apologies, no acknowledgements, nothing. I didn't wait for them. I didn't need them. During lunch break, one of the workshop participants asked me how I'd built the gallery. I gave her the short version: savings, careful planning, attention to detail, patience. And family support, she asked. I smiled slightly. No. I built it without that. She nodded, understanding something in my tone. That's even more impressive. The takeaway, if there was one, was simple. You don't have to break the machine that erased you. You can learn how it works, buy the gears, and make it feed the street. My father had built his wealth on commercial real estate. He dismissed my art as impractical, as feelings instead of finance. But I'd learned finance. I'd learned structures and cash flow and documentation. I'd combined it with what I loved. And when his machine broke down, when the gears seized up from neglect and over-leveraging, I was there. Not to gloat. Not to punish. Just to acquire the asset and put it to better use. The gallery hummed with quiet activity. The building housed artists who were making work, teaching classes, selling pieces. The tenants were paying rent on time. The maintenance issues were being addressed. The lights stayed on. Connor called me once, months later. He's doing okay, he said, referring to our father. He found office space in a different building. He's rebuilding. Good, I said, and I meant it. Do you ever think about reaching out? I was quiet for a moment. No. Why not? Because he knows where I am, I said. He can reach out if he wants to. Connor sighed. I don't think he will. Then that's his choice. We hung up. I went back to my work. Sunday morning, I opened the gallery alone. The quiet was peaceful, not lonely. I made coffee in the small kitchen, checked my email, reviewed the week's calendar. A message from Helen: studio waiting list is up to 32 names. Should we look at expanding? Another message from Angela at the CDFI: saw the article about Northlight building. Well done. Let's talk about your next project. I replied to both, professional and measured. Then I walked through the gallery space, adjusting a frame that had shifted slightly, straightening a chair. My grandmother's voice echoed in my memory. Cash flow is louder than applause. The cash was flowing. The applause was unnecessary. I didn't hear from my father. I didn't wait to. The machine that had erased me was now feeding the people he'd never thought to value. And I'd done it without breaking anything, without cruelty, without revenge. Just documentation. Just patience. Just the slow, steady work of building something real. The morning light stretched across the floor. I sipped my coffee and smiled.